So setting the scene here, Bali Maharaj is performing some preparations to perform a sacrifice, so he can continue to keep the post that he has taken from Indra. So he and all the demons have attacked the heavenly planets, as has been done many times in the different stories of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Indra is always afraid of someone taking over his post. Bali Maharaj actually was given weapons and was given by Prahlad Maharaj, his grandfather. He was given a garland that would never dry up. He was given a chariot and bows and arrows and sword and everything like that. And he attacked the heavenly planets. And so he took over the heavenly planets. He took over the post of Indra, and he ultimately is visited by Lord Vishnu as the incarnation of Vamanadev. So the purport here talks about the story of King Prithu as well. So King Prithu was also you could say, a Shaktivesh avatar of the Lord. He was empowered incarnation. He was the son of Vena. And so he was also trying to perform sacrifices and also was impeded by Indra. So there's a theme here that Indra was very envious of various devotees and of the Lord in various pastimes. Like we see in the Govardhan Leela pastime, Indra was envious that the residents of Vrindavan were satisfied by not actually worshiping him, but by worshiping Govardhan Hill. And then in the story of Prahlad, he was actually trying to stop Hiranyakashipu from performing his austerities. The demigods had gotten together and they tried to impede Hiranyakashipu's sacrifices. Indra ultimately came and tried to kill Prahlad, and Narada Muni told him, this is actually a great devotee. You cannot kill him. And so Indra is actually a big part of these pastimes when it comes to a catalyst for some kind of Leela to happen. And so it's described that Prabhupada writes in the purport that some of these purports about Indra and all those stories, that we are not actually envious of those who are doing something else, some other thing, but we're envious of those who are doing the same thing as we are and who are doing it better. Like, for example, if you're a cook or something, you're not envious of someone who sings very nicely. You're envious of someone who also cooks very nicely. So generally, we're envious of someone who's doing the same thing as us. So Indra was envious of Prithu, is envious of Bali, because they were performing Ashwamedha yagyas and horse sacrifices and all different sacrifices because he thought that they wanted to take over his post, and he always wants to keep a great hold of his post because there's a very opulent position to be the king of heaven. So let's look at a few verses here in the that we can see from the different purport, the first purport rather, the story of King Prithu. So this is Canto 4, text 19, Canto 4, chapter 19, text 2. When the most powerful Indra, the king of heaven, saw this, he considered the fact that King Prithu was going to exceed him in fruitive activities. Thus, Indra could not tolerate the great sacrificial ceremonies performed by King Prithu. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, since no one in this material world can tolerate another's advancement, everyone in this material world is called Matsara, envious. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is therefore said that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely nirmatsara, non-envious. In other words, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, however, if someone excels another person, the devotee who is excelled thinks how fortunate the other person is to be advancing in devotional service. Such non-envy is typical of Vaikuntha. However, when one is envious of his competitor, that is material. The demigods posted in the material world are not exempt from envy. There's a few points that Srila Prabhupada is bringing up here that in the Krishna consciousness sense, or in the sense of the Vaikuntha consciousness, is that someone who's exceeding us in devotional service, they're celebrating that. How much of that do we have? How much of that kind of mood do we have? And if we don't have that mood, how much, are we thinking, I got a little ways to go when it comes to this type of mood? Srimati Radharani, when she sees a devotee of Krishna, she's thinking, this Krishna, please bless this person because he or she is such a much better devotee than me, even though she's the topmost devotee. Or it's described when the bird is singing, the bumblebee in Goloka, he's listening. And then when the bird is singing, when the bumblebee is listening, the bird is singing. Even though the bumblebee is the greatest singer, he's still listening and thinking, oh wow, the bird is such a wonderful singer. So this kind of mood of non-competition is a mood of the spiritual world. And then before that point, he says that he talks about matsara, enviousness. So nirmatsara. So that's the first verse. One of the first verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam is what Srila Prabhupada is referencing here. That dharma parojita kaitavottara paramo nitsara nirmatsaranam satam. So that is Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 2. So the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. Nirmatsara. So those who are envious, they're the ones who can understand the Srimad Bhagavatam because it's something transcendental. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada beautifully describes it is purely transcendental literature which can be understood only by the pure devotees of the Lord who are transcendental to competitive sense gratification. In the material world, there is keen competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community, nation and nation. But the devotee of the Lord rise above such competitions. They do not compete with the materialists because they are on the path back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. Such transcendentalists are non-envious and pure in heart. So he's talking about the competition in this world, the competition between man and man, nation and nation, and the election between the different, nominees. There's such a competition, but devotees are above this kind of competitive sense gratification, he says. In the mature world, everyone is envious of everyone else, and therefore there's competition. But the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from material envy, but they are well-wishing to everyone, and they strive to establish a competition-less society with God in the center. So Krishna consciousness is meant for those who are unenvious. You become unenvious when you practice Krishna consciousness because we're keeping Krishna in the center, and we're striving to keep a competitionless society, as it says here, with God in the center. Now, in this world, everything is about competition, whether you're, whatever, varna and ashram you're in. If you're in this material world, it's all about competition. Who can make the most money? Who's the most beautiful? Who is the strongest? Who is the most renounced? Who is the most this? We're always striving to one-up each other. And even in devotional life, this kind of conception can creep into our, into our minds that, okay, we're becoming devotees, but I want to have the best tilak. I want to have the best kurta. I want to have the best clothes. I want to have the best everything. But this is not the mood of a devotee. A devotee doesn't think like this. A devotee is always humble, and the devotee is always thinking everyone else is the master, giving respect to others. Trinadapi sunichena. So this kind of envy is a material thing. So we have to try to give up these things like envy, lust, greed, anger. Anyway, this is a separate point. But let's talk a little bit about sacrifice. So in this story, there's a performance of sacrifice, yajna. So what is yajna? Yajna means sacrifice, essentially. But in the terms of our life, yajna means that activity that we do to satisfy the Lord. So whatever we do to satisfy the Lord, this is considered as yajna. So I talked about the election. So these people, they're trying to compete with each other to become leaders. But what is an actual leader? The actual leader is one who engages their subjects in yajna, in sacrifice. So let's look at a few verses that talks about yajna or sacrifice. So thus the proper, this is Canto 4, chapter 16, text 5. Thus the proper execution of yajna, sacrifice, is required. As indicated here, in King Prithu alone would induce all the citizens to engage in sacrificial activities so that there would be no scarcity or distress. In Kali Yuga, however, in the so-called secular state, the executive branch of government is in charge of so-called kings. The executive branch of government is in the charge of so-called kings and presidents, who are all fools and rascals, ignorant of the intricacies of nature's causes and ignorant of the principles of sacrifice. Such rascals simply make various plans which always fail, and the people subsequently suffer disturbances. So these are very heavy points, that the president or the king of the of the kingdom or the country should engage the citizens in sacrifice. They should engage the citizens in Krishna consciousness, because that is the ultimate yajna, that is the ultimate sacrifice. But nowadays, in the Kali Yuga, Srila Prabhupada is saying the presidents or the leaders, they don't do that. All they are engaging their subjects in is how to get sense gratification. What is the best way we can gain more money? What is the best way we can exploit one another or exploit the earth? And this is considered as success. And so we cannot actually back these kind of leaders. This is a farce. This is complete, against our Vedic principles, because these are actually Shudras who are actually leading the countries, if they are engaging their subjects in the only goal of life, which is sense gratification. So he further says, let's talk about yajna again. In the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about yajna, that this is chapter 3, text 13. The devotees of Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. This is a very famous verse, Yagna Shishtashina Santo Muchante Sarva Kilbishe. And then the next verse, Srila Prabhupada talks about, actually Lord Krishna talks about the actual sacrifice that we should perform. All living beings subsist on food grains, anad bhavanti bhutani, which are produced from rain. Rains are produced by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, and the yajna is born of prescribed duties. So when we perform yajna, or in other ages when yajna was performed, then rains come down, and then from rain, grain is produced, and that's how all living entities subsist. And so in this age, I will talk about later what the actual yajna or sacrifice that is prescribed. And let's look at this purport of this Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 14. So he's talking about how the demigods, when we pray to the demigods, then things such as rain and sun, these things are given. But if you actually perform sacrifice to Krishna directly, then all these other demigods are automatically satisfied. Just as the tree, when you water the root, the branches are automatically nourished. So when we actually offer sacrifice to Lord Vishnu or Krishna, then the demigods who actually give the rain and who give the sun and all these different things that we need for our sustenance, then these are all satisfied. So, and then the offering of food, the importance of offering our food to Krishna in a mood of sacrifice. This is talked about here. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness first offer food to Krishna and then eat, the process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such actions, not only are past sinful reactions to the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all conditions of material nature. I just thought this was a an interesting line here that I'm going to read in light of what's going on in the world. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. And he says someone who doesn't do that, they continue to increase their volume of sinful reaction. Right. So the main point is that we have to act for the satisfaction of Krishna. That is the yajna. That is the yajna that is prescribed. Selfishness, when we are selfishness, when we're competitive in this material world, that does not bring us happiness. But when we sacrifice something, that is what brings us happiness. When we sacrifice for Lord Krishna, for Lord Vishnu, that is when we're feeling some satisfaction. And so when it comes to our prescription of sacrifice in this age, it is prescribed that Sankirtan Yajna is the ultimate sacrifice. So there's a verse in the first canto, chapter 17, text 34. In this age of Kali, the greatest common formula of sacrifice is the Sankirtan Yajna. That is the opinion of the experts who know how to propagate the process of yajna. Lord Chaitanya preached this method of yajna, and it is understood from this verse that the sacrificial method of Sankirtan Yajna may be performed anywhere and everywhere in order to drive away the personality of Kali and save human society from falling prey to the influence of this age. So in this age, one performs Sankirtan Yajna as the ultimate sacrifice. In other ages, other types of sacrifice were performed where there was a fire yajna and you had to use gold utensils, and after you use them once, you didn't use them anymore. So such type of elaborate yajnas are not actually prescribed in this age, because you cannot find qualified brahmanas. You cannot find all the ingredients needed for such yajnas, and that is not the prescription in this Kali Yuga, where people are, short memories, always disturbed, All these are the things that described a people in this Kali Yuga. So what is prescribed in this Kali Yuga? It's described in the 11th canto, 5th chapter, and 32nd verse. This is a very famous verse. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sangopangashtra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti He Sumedasa. So let's break up this verse a little bit. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam, one who is saying Krishna, but who's not Krishna, who doesn't have the complexion of Krishna. So it is described in the Krishna book that Garga Muni said that the Lord will come in 3 colors. He'll come as gold, red, and white. I believe that's red, white, and yellow. So we know the red and the white, but we didn't know the golden. So this is actually prophesizing Sri Chaitanya. This is actually describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation in the Kali Yuga. Sangopangastta Parshadam. He comes with his weapons. In all the different incarnations, Lord Krishna came with his weapons to annihilate the demons. But in this age, the weapon he comes with is his beauty. It's described, Jiva Goswami describes that the Lord Chaitanya comes and he comes with the weapon of his beauty to attract all the living entities to him. Parshadam means his associates. He comes with all his associates. Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, these are all his associates, his Parshada. Yagyai Sankirtana prayer. The sacrifice prescribed in this age is Sankirtana, or the congregational chanting of the Lord. Yajantihi Sumedasa, one who has good brain substance. So one who has good brain substance, they will perform this Sankirtan Yagya to worship that personality who is not blue like Krishna, but who is golden, who is describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is our prescription. This is the prescription of those in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, those in the line of Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada came in 1965, and what did he do? What broke open this amazing Krishna consciousness movement was him going to Tompkins Square Park, sitting down, and chanting the holy name in a public forum. This is what transformed people's lives, the pure chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Now, some people, some critics or some devotees even say, is it still even relative for people to go out and chant on the streets? And I say 100%, this is shastric. This is what is described in the Shastras, what we should do, perform Sankirtan. Okay, it might not say out on the street, but we can see from the example of Lord Chaitanya, from the example of Srila Prabhupada, this is what has been done, and this is how Krishna consciousness can spread all over the world, and how it has spread all over the world. So in conclusion, I would like to just the takeaway here is that sacrifice is meant for the satisfaction of Krishna. Samsiddhir Haritoshanam, as the verse says, that you can perform all kinds of things, but the main goal of all your activity should be to satisfy Krishna, Haritoshanam. So we have to perform sacrifice and yajna. Yajna means sacrifice, and sacrifice comes in different forms. Sacrificing, if you're a family person, if you're a grihastha, brahmachari, vanaprastha, sannyas, whatever it is that you're doing, do those activities for the satisfaction of Krishna. And in this age, the yajna that is prescribed is Sankirtan yajna, or chanting the holy name of the Lord. And we should try to perform this sacrifice as much as we can. We should try to perform as much chanting as we can, because this is what is prescribed in this age to cleanse our hearts, chetu darpada marjanam, and how we can please Krishna and thereby become happy in our lives. So I'd like to open it up now for any discussion or any questions that anyone may have.
Kulaprati Prabhu has put a question in the chat box if you would like to.
Sure. Question: if yajna cannot be performed correctly and is not the recommended yajna for Kali Yuga, then why do we perform yajna today in our communities? That's a very good question. So this is a question that always comes up. We do perform yajna when it comes to samskaras and whatnot, because this is we have to perform it according to the Vidi, the Pancharatrika Vidi. But Bhagavad Vidi and the Pancharatrika Vidi have to be coincide. They have to be parallel. Of course, more importance in our line is given to the Bhagavad Vidi. The Bhagavad Vidi being directly Krishna conscious activities, hearing, chanting, shravanam, kirtam, like that. But the Pancharatrika Vidi also has to be followed. So the Pancharatrika Vidi means deity worship, and within deity worship and Pancharatrika practices is the yajnas that are performed. And my understanding is that when we perform, Gopal Bhatta Goswami has given the Satkriya Sardipika, which he has described how the Gaudiya Vaishnavas are performing these vidis. So I don't think that we should throw one out and only keep another. These things have to be done in parallel. But of course, more importance is given to Bhagavad Vidi.